Well, hello, how are we all? Scott McArthur here, and welcome to Artefact. I'm going to start with an apology for last week. What a nightmare. What happened? I tracked it down, and it was a little hub that you put all your USB gear into. It had a fault in it. So here I am tonight with a new hub. Somebody let me know if you can hear me, please, in the chat. I don't want that happening again. It was awful, but we got 20 good minutes out of it. And I have to say, I really appreciate all of you who hung around and got to the end with me. And there's a story that was right at the start that didn't come across at all. So I'm going to have to repeat that. But anyway, thank you very much. So welcome to Artefact. Now, if you've not been here before, this is an opportunity for you to think about stories, talk about stories, and we're going to cover a number of things tonight that are going to set the scene for the future. But tonight is actually about this. Let me just show you. There it is there. This is about a story about human magnificence, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. But what we do on this show is we try to explore the power of storytelling, and we've come up with some phrases that we've taken from other storytellers, from the literature. One of them is that facts tell while stories sell. Facts tell while stories sell, which I think is incredibly powerful. And then just this few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, we found this quote by the former children's laureate, Charles Riddell, and he said, "Reading allows us to see and understand the world through the eyes of others. A good book is an empathy engine." And I think that the power of that, the petrol in that engine, is story. So that's what the show is about. And for the last 9 weeks, we've been laying the foundation for this. And I'm amazed at how well it's gone. Excuse me. And I'm delighted with the response I've had. But tonight, I've got a few things that I'd like to announce in terms of how we're going to move this forward. But just before I do that, I'm just going to check the chat. Could somebody let me know how we're doing here sound-wise? Because I think we're okay. Because I think if people couldn't hear me, they would be shouting at me already. But please let me know, someone, if you can hear me, because I don't want the same error happening. Hey, thanks, Peter. Thank you very much. You can hear me. So that's great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So... a couple of things. I'm going to make a change to the show. This was planned, but this is week 10. How did we get to week 10? I can't believe it. The chap who's been mentoring me through this said if I get past the first 3, I'll be okay. So, but this is week 10, and I think things are just going to intensify. Certainly, while England is in lockdown, and I'm actually going to be launching a second show, which I'll tell you about later on. It's nothing to do with storytelling, but I'm going to do a second show just to try and help people through the lockdown period. And thanks, Doug. Thanks for letting me know it's all clear. But it was always my intention to change this from me speaking to others speaking. And there are 2 websites, 2 groups that I absolutely love. And I'm going. If you've never heard of these, you're in for a treat. Now, I was coaching one of you earlier this week on her story, and the individual, she can mention herself if she like, but I won't mention any names, but is a bit of a science fan like me. And there's a brilliant storytelling website called the Story Collider. And I came across this many years ago, and it really demonstrated to me all those years ago that even in my background and from my background, that facts don't cut the mustard in terms of trying to change people's perspectives on things. Now, I know that's been demonstrated writ large more recently with Trumpistan, etc. But this website has been there for a long time, and I highly recommend it to you if you're interested in science. However, there's another website, so that's the Story Collider. There's another group which is much larger, and they are the largest storytelling community on the planet that I'm aware of. And it's called The Moth, themoth.org. And The Moth is how to describe it? The Moth is more like a live storytelling, almost like mini TEDx's. People get given maybe 5 or 10 minutes to tell their story. And I thought, yeah, that's really good. And it was that I lifted as an idea, and then it's morphed into what I'm now doing. But my intention is for the next few months, and this might change, of course, because things are changing all the time. But for the next few months, I'm going to be announcing some titles that I'd like to invite people to tell stories about. And tonight is an example of that, because a good friend of mine who I've worked with for a couple of years, and I'll tell you more about her, Michelle, in a minute or two, but I knew I would be in safe hands tonight to ask her to come along and tell you her story. But this is the sort of thing I want to do every week. I want somebody to come on, maybe talk about diversity, music, acting, grief, love, empathy, whatever. And I've got a list, and you can help me with that list, guys, if you want to. And I want that to be the focus of the evening. And then the idea is that we will then invite the person to tell the story, and then we'll help them. We'll give them some feedback. We'll tell them how we feel, etc. So we'll do that. It's a bit of a pilot tonight, but I'm definitely cheating because I've got a brilliant storyteller tonight who's told this story many times, and it's lovely. So, but nevertheless, we'll do that with Michelle tonight. We'll let her know what we think and how we feel following her story. But when we're working with non-professional storytellers, I want them to feel comfortable on camera, and I know that's hell of a difficult, but we're going to try and do that. And I know we're starting to build an audience up that a few of you have already said to you you'd like to contribute. But I'm now looking for volunteers. So if you're interested in contributing, I've got about 15 now, believe it or not. But I'd like more, because I'd like to structure it. So if you do want to tell your story, please let me know. The other thing I'm intending to do is I'm then going to build it into either a monthly or a bi-monthly bigger event, where I'm going to have maybe 5 or 6 storytellers talking about themes. So the weekly show is going to continue, but we're going to have a bigger event, maybe on a weekend, a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning or something. Not expecting lots of people to show up, but I want to create the content so we can then share that with other people. So we're building up our collateral as a group, as I like to call a story circle. And I'm so proud of this little circle we've developed. And I was saying to Michelle earlier, I want it to be like a bunch of friends round the fire pit, chatting about things and telling each other and sharing each other's stories. So I hope that makes sense. And I'm certainly quite excited about it. Any questions before I move on? Introduce my guest. Let me just check that I've got everything working here. Yes, I have. So don't forget that facts tell, stories sell. Isn't that brilliant? I love it. Okay, let me just check the other platforms. You know, honestly, I could do with some sort of octopus capabilities here, so I could get everybody. Right, there we go. YouTube's working fine. Thank you. Let me just double check one more, guys. I had them all open, but it's a bit slow tonight. But we're on. Right. So tonight, special, really special tonight. And I'm funny, Michelle, I know you're listening. I usually feel quite nervous doing this show. I don't tonight, because I've got a pal joining me. And believe me, that's an absolute compliment, because Michelle and I have done about, I think it's 3 or 4. I'll bring her on. Oh my God. This is Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hiya.
We've done 3 or 4 of these things together, and the only problem from history, Michelle, is keeping us to 20 minutes, half an hour, I think. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's probably fairly accurate, yeah.
So I want to tell, I warned Michelle I would do this, but I want to tell you a little bit of a story about me, Michelle. About 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, Michelle, is that right? About 2.5 years ago? Must be. A
decade, at least.
Michelle is quite high up in something called the Professional Speakers Association. And I had a pal of mine called Heather, who I've known for 30 years. Heather sometimes joins us. I don't know if she's on tonight, but Doug's saying hi, Michelle. There you go. There's Doug saying hi, Michelle. Thanks, Doug. And Heather had asked me if I fancied coming along to this Professional Speaker Association group. And I had been speaking for a while, as some of you know, but I hadn't done it professionally. And she'd said, look, her and I had done some events together. And she said, but come along and you might get something out of this. So I went along. And this lady here was the boss, weren't you? You were the regional
president of the Midlands.
Regional president of the Midlands. And we got chatting, and in the end, Michelle helped me get my membership, because you have to be proposed by 2 people, and I became a member of that group. So that was hold on, I've got the thing in the background here. It's looking a bit unprofessional. Let me just take that off. I don't like that being on there. Sorry. There you go. That's better. So we got chatting. We got to be quite good friends. We went to a conference together. Michelle was speaking, and she was amazing, and I was like, oh God. But then over the next probably 18 months, we actually did some gigs together, and we've been as far away as Greece together. We've shared stages with quite big audiences together, and we've done, you know, quite a lot together. And I'm very pleased and proud to have her as my friend. So welcome to the show, Michelle Mills Porter. I didn't give you your whole name, did I? Now, folks, I'll ask Michelle later to give you her contact details because she's well worth speaking to, but I'll let her tell you about what she does. But anyway, I'd like to welcome Michelle, and we're going to talk about human magnificence. So before you tell your story and I ask you to show us your artifact, Michelle, I'm just going to put you onto, there you go, you're zoomed in now. Could you just give the group a little bit of an introduction to you and what it is you do, Michelle, please?
Well, I guess this is all related to my story, Scott. And I have to say, by the way, I thank Heather from the bottom of my heart for introducing us, because you're a very, very dear friend. And we've had some laughs, haven't we? Telling
Yes.
poetry to each other in bars, getting a bit tipsy and stuff like that. It's been
No.
a laugh.
Nobody will believe that you and I drink, Michelle. No, nobody will believe. Doug Easton, don't you say anything.
Yeah. So now I'm a behaviour specialist. I specialise in human behaviour. I specialise in understanding core values and getting right to the heart of what truly motivates individuals for organisations as well as individually. But that all has changed, and it all changed because of my story.
Yeah. So can I ask you to lift your artifact from behind you, please?
Yes.
Now, one of the collaboration junkie says, hi, Michelle. Hey, Michelle, even.
Hello,
Now,
Mr. Blanket.
Oh, look at that. Right. What is that?
This is a very, very special Buddha.
Don't drop it.
It's not worth a lot in monetary value, but it's extremely special to me. But I don't want to tell you why yet.
Okay. So if I can ask you to please share this story about human magnificence, please, Michelle.
I will. Okay. So my previous life, I was running a marketing company that I'd started from scratch, and it was doing fabulously. I couldn't believe how well it was doing. We'd gone from 0 to nearly $750,000 turnover by year 3. Wow. And we were winning every single award going. Youngest company in the country to ever win Investors in People. And I just thought that I was, riding the crest of a wave. And Stuart and I had been together for 12 years or so. We kind of talked about marriage, but, why try and fix something if it's not broken? So we always kind of put it back on the back burner. And we just decided to celebrate, really. I decided that I wanted to go on a couple of holidays, and we learned to dive in this country, and we started to take some rather exotic holidays. We found ourselves in the Maldives, and all sorts of things. And then we booked our first ever holiday away at Christmas. Never been away at Christmas before, but our dive team decided they wanted to put on this holiday. And so we booked this diving holiday in Sri Lanka. So off we zoomed to Sri Lanka. We'd been there a couple of days, and then it was Christmas. And the Sri Lankans don't celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day. They celebrate it on Christmas Eve. And Christmas Day is like one big bank holiday. But especially for us, the dive centre, the Poseidon Dive Centre in Hikkaduwa, put on this fantastic party for us, and really rolled the boat out and just gave us a fantastic evening. We were having water fights in the moonlight on the beach, and it was just so special.
Oh, dear. Could do with some of that just now, Michelle.
I know, yeah, fond memories. We ended up, after drinking all these cocktails and everything, we ended up kind of stumbling off to bed at about 4 a.m. in the morning, promising that we were going to meet on the beach in the morning and go for a dive. So off we went to bed, and I remember waking up when the alarm clock went off and went down to breakfast with a bombing headache. And we sat out on the veranda and everyone was having breakfast, and I think I managed orange juice, and that was probably it, and decided to just give up and say, do you know what, I'm going back to bed. I don't want to go diving this morning. It's the last thing on my mind. Enjoy yourselves, guys. I'm going to go and kip. So there we were on Boxing Day, opened a couple of presents from home that, you know, my family had packed in our suitcases and stuff, and decided to go back to sleep. So there we were. And then I remember a little bit later, we heard this banging and crashing and slamming of doors. And I thought, crikey, who have they let in this hotel? You know, see, this is outrageous. I know it's not a 5-star, but crikey. And I just pulled the pillow over my ears and tried to go back to sleep. Later still, I remember hearing this incessant banging, bang, bang, and it really vibrated the hotel. And I thought, I can't believe this. We've picked a hotel that is having building work and they didn't tell us anything about it. So Stuart gets up and he goes to the curtain and he pulls the curtain back. And I just heard something in his voice when he said, I think you better come and look at this.
Right.
I knew something was wrong. So I shot out of bed and I ran to the window. And I looked out of the window, which is on the 3rd floor of the Hickadoodle Beach Hotel. As high as you can get, there is nothing above us apart from the roof. And I looked out and there was just water everywhere. The sea had completely invaded us. And it was as far as the eye could see.
God.
It was absolutely shocking. There was this sound like a storm going on and all this cracking and crunching as everything in the water's path was just demolished. And I remember that incessant banging was this boat being smacked into the side of the hotel again and again and again with the waves. And that's what it was. And I just couldn't comprehend it. I looked at the dive centre down below and the roof was being picked up and carried off by these waves. And I followed it inland to look around the corner. And I looked inland and all I could see, as far as the eye could see, was water. It was carrying buses and coaches and cars. And there wasn't a single soul in sight, Scott. I was absolutely terrified.
And so remind everyone when this was, Michelle.
Well, it was Boxing Day, Day 2004.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what was going on. Let me just tell you. I mean, first of all, I had this kind of, I guess it was shock.
Yeah.
For me, what real fear is like, it's like taking a spoonful of mustard, English mustard, or too much wasabi, and get this kind of fizz that goes at your nose. And you know that there's this inevitable wave as it kind of sweeps over your whole body. You know it's going to happen. So you're just waiting there for it to happen. And it kicks in. And it's just quite an extraordinary thing. You know, you're thrown into, your body does some very strange things. It knows what it's doing. And it's kind of in control of you and not the other way around. So while you're trying to think, oh my God, what's going on? Your body is doing other things, you know. I picked up a phone and I managed to get a message to my sister and to Stuart's sister. And it said, there's been a bit of a flood, but we're okay. Right. And just as I sent that message, it just went dead. Oh. So I'm hoping the message is gone, but the phone lines are dead. Everything's down. I look outside the window and I think, well, no wonder. There's nothing left. Everything is just being carried away by this water. There's sewage in the water. There's diesel. There's, you know, the smell of death and salt water all around you. It's filthy and it's absolutely terrifying. So I picked up a video camera and I just started recording, and I thought maybe I can record some footage for the dive centre and help them get some insurance money. I didn't realise it doesn't really work like that out there. And as soon as I'd done that, as soon as I picked up the video camera, I threw it down again. And there was something weird because I realised that anything that had monetary value just had no currency anymore. Our whole life was upside down, and we found ourselves thinking, who can we help? What can we do? But we couldn't see anyone else around. So, you know, we just did what we could. So we started to pack sensible things. And I remember thinking all the expensive stuff was in a corner. You know, that's got no currency anymore. What can we use? What can we barter with? What's going to be useful for our survival? And that's what we did. Right. It was a little bit later that we opened up because I couldn't understand, why did we not hear any warning? Why were there no sirens? Why did nobody knock on our door? And we opened up the door onto the corridor. Oh, it's like a nightmare, Scott. Really? There was blood all over the floor, there was broken glass, there was sheets that had been ripped up to use as bandages or something. That's what it looked like. And we couldn't get out of the hotel because the water was still up to the ceiling of the first floor of that hotel.
Right.
Absolutely terrifying.
God. And what could you see out the window, Michelle?
Well, all we could see was water and couldn't see anything else. And it was, I don't know how long it was later, but we eventually got to the other side of the hotel indoors. And over the other side of the Gore Road, we saw two people from our dive team.
Right.
One of them was quite badly injured, and the other one, was kind of shouting at us, telling us to come over there. So eventually we did, we got just a rucksack each and, some sensible clothing and all that kind of stuff. And we half waded and half swam to get out of the hotel, across the road, which was a feat in itself because underfoot there's shards of glass and there's corrugated iron roofs and, and you lose your footing. So it's better to, to half kind of swim.
Yeah.
And we got to the other side of the Gore Road and we joined them. And I remember saying to them, why do you want us to stand in this shack with you? And they pointed at the hotel. And from what we could see, it looked like the whole hotel was just lilting towards the sea.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, God, it was terrifying, Anyway, to cut a long story short, several hours later, after we'd been kind of collecting things and trying to be sensible at what we were keeping, what we had around us, what might help us survive, helmets and BCD jackets from the dive centre, anything that we could use. And we saw the owner of the dive centre, Cammy. He'd come down the Gore Road because the water had receded enough for people to walk. And he was walking on what used to be the Gore Road. And he had with him some of his boat boys, some people from the dive centre that worked with him. Mm-hmm. And we shouted at him and he shouted at us to get down. So we did. And then he said something in Sinhalese to one of the lads. And the next thing I know, we are being force marched inland at a rate of knots. And people are screaming and shouting, the water's coming in again, it's going out again. This is what had been happening the whole day.
Right.
And there was this force march through the most unbelievable heat for a couple of miles inland, and then faced with this big kind of rocky, gravelly hill.
Yes.
And we just pushed ourselves. I just had nothing left in the tank. And I remember Stuart's hand on my back it just elevated me up that huge hill to the top. And then when we got to the top, these gates opened and we were at Jimmy Lal's house. Jimmy was Cammy's uncle and we're at his house and they opened at the gates and there was a garden full of refugees, people from all walks of life, spoke all different languages, wearing what they were wearing when the tsunami hit.
Gosh. And, oh, God, I mean, you must have, what was in your head? What was going through your head at the time?
I'm going to be completely honest because I can't be any other way, I was really cross. I was like, why did nobody tell us what was going on? And I think I was so consumed with my own, why did you leave me behind, that I didn't think what they'd been going through, had they been washed in different directions and all that kind of stuff. So that's the truth of it. Your mind plays games. Lots of things fly through your mind. And it's what you act upon that counts, not what goes through your mind, because what goes through your mind, nobody can control. And I think the extraordinary thing that happened, Scott, was in the midst of all this massive adversity, with everyone's lives being turned completely on its head, I started to see these snippets of collaboration that was just amazing. That phone that I had that had gone dead. Well, I remember I was the only one with a phone there. Nobody else had had a chance to grab a phone or anything. But somebody else had a SIM card. Somebody else had a battery. Somebody else had a wire. I don't know what happened, but it was like the little mice from Bagpuss. All of a sudden, there's this working phone. And what we did with that working phone was the first piece. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. The first little piece of collaboration that was so meaningful. We managed to make sure that every single person in that garden got one message home to tell their loved ones that they were okay.
Well done. Gosh.
I cannot tell you how valuable that phone call was. And it brought it home to me when I saw this little Japanese girl. There was no one else in that garden. I say little girl, she was a young adult. There was no one else that spoke Japanese in the garden. To hear her talking in her mother tongue to somebody that she loved and loved her, you could just see it all over her face. And it was just such a wonderful feeling that we'd managed to make this happen.
Wow.
And we were there for about a week, and throughout the week we had these little snippets of just magnificence, people coming together and creating something bigger than the sum of its parts. You know, it was.
Sorry, can I interrupt you? How long were you there for?
We were there for a week.
A week? What did you eat? Sorry to interrupt you, but a week?
Okay, so my first memory is soggy Ritz biscuits and tiny unripe bananas.
Right, okay.
Yeah, there's an interesting story, because one night all the Sri Lankan guys had gone out, and a couple of scouts had gone out to try and find food, and they came back and they were cheering, the horns were going, they opened up the gates and they came in. They had 2 carrier bags full of fish, and they found these fish that had been stranded, and they gathered them up, and the whole garden had got these 2 carrier bags of fish and, you know, and a bag full of rice. And I swear to God, this is the most amazing thing. I understand the story of the loaves and fish now, because you think, how on earth is that going to get around everyone? But we were all sated that night. Just a morsel, just a handful of rice and fish, and every one of us was sated. It was just beautiful in so many ways. These little pockets of beauty came out of that horrendous story.
And how about? Sorry, this is a question my other half would ask. What were the toilets like?
There was one toilet outside.
Yeah.
Jimmy Lau, I mean, he came and lived outside with us. He gave up his bedroom for an older man who had onset septicemia and, you know, some other injured people. He gave his beds up, and he came and slept out in the garden with us. And there was one toilet. And hardly any water, so you don't want to use that toilet. But I'll tell you the one thing that I remember: your body doesn't function in the way that you think it will. You don't need to go to the toilet. Your body kind of holds on to everything.
Yeah.
You don't sweat as much as you think you would, you know, and you're out in this belting sun. You think you're just, you know, but your body just holds on to it.
Oh wow.
You don't need to drink as much. You don't need to eat as much. And yeah, and most people just didn't want to use the toilet for a week.
Good Lord. Good Lord.
I mean, we stank by the end of it. We stank. It was foul. It was horrendous. But do you know what? We were alive. And there are 1,000,001 stories I can unravel from that, but I won't.
Before we to finish, is there any questions from the group? Has anyone got a question for Michelle you'd like to ask? Well, here's one here, I think. Here we go. I think some people on LinkedIn are having some issues, Michelle.
While you're doing that, Scott, I'll just carry on and say a little bit about, and just stop me when you're ready. But I think that the story that I tell isn't necessarily about that. And I always say that the story is the wrapping paper. The gift are the lessons that you've learned and that you share with others. And that's like the gift inside the present.
Yes.
And for me, it's what I learned about humanity, what I learned about collaboration, and continue to learn about collaboration afterwards. Those are the lessons that, you know, that make up my story. And it's that collaboration that is just, you know, so powerful.
Yes. Can you see Dave's question there?
No, because I've got our private chatter.
That's all right. I'll read it. It says, thanks for the question, Dave. Outside of the phone call, what was the most powerful thing you witnessed?
The most powerful thing I witnessed, I didn't actually witness. So what I mean by that is the stories you hear. The stories you hear of the people that are in that garden with you, and how a stranger, you know, saved the life of someone they didn't even know. So all those tiny little acts of, you know, Pete reaching out and grabbing a baby's hand as they were swept past and reuniting that baby with a mother, and all those tiny little things you hear, they just stay with you. I think, so to sum it up, I think the most powerful thing was understanding that at the core of humanity, when you shock human beings and you see right down to the core, and at the core is this incredible compassion, benevolence, goodness. And I think it's in all of us. I really, really think that we have that in our core. Yes, there are other things that can, illness can scupper our that truth, illness and circumstances can change that. I like to think we're all born with that.
Yes, I mean that. There's a nice question here from Peter Edge. He says, "So, was there no rescue effort that got to you for a week?"
No, we have. I'm not gonna harp on about this because I like to concentrate. No, what I mean is, I could get on my soapbox now and tell you a lot of things. The Sun newspaper said that they'd mounted a rescue campaign to come and get us, and actually what they were doing is they were extracting information from my brother, giving him false hope and trying to get information out of him, which they turned into a really misleading story about us, and never sent anyone over to help us. So it's a can of worms I don't want to open, but all the time that you're sitting there thinking about it, part of you wants to go, "Hello, I see a helicopter. We're British here. And you have to stop yourself and say, hold on, there are people that need help more than we do. Just be patient. Just wait your turn."
And there's a supplementary from Pete, and he says, "How did the leaders emerge in that group?"
Do you know what? Leaders didn't emerge. Didn't emerge. What happened was every single person found their role, and all of those roles fitted together. There was no hierarchy. There was no politics. There was no competition. It was the most beautiful collaboration. I'm getting goosebumps now as I remember it.
Yeah.
Because it was. There was nobody with any stripes on their arms. Everyone pitched in, and it doesn't matter what you were good at, everything was equally valuable.
Right, okay. Wow. Gosh. Do you know, I've heard you tell that story probably 4 or 5 times, and every time you tell it, you seem to have more has come to you, or maybe you just don't tell it all deliberately at one time, but magic. And explain the artifact, the link, before you go into the very final part that I'm dying for you to tell.
But the reason that you don't hear it all, Scott, is because it was a week of my life, and when I'm on stage doing a 20-minute talk or a 40-minute talk or whatever, you're only ever going to get a snippet. There are thousands of stories to unfold from that.
Wonderful.
This is on the day that we managed to get to, we were taken to Colombo. The Sri Lankas got us to Colombo, and eventually it was the Danish Air Force that got us out. They put on a plane to get us back. Wasn't the British. They managed to put on this plane to get us out of the country and back to their country. And we got to the airport, and everything that we had left, we just Stu and I threw everything we had at this woman that was selling these little Buddhas. And I got one for my nan, one for my parents, one for Stuart's parents, and one each for our siblings. And I don't know how much money we had there. We gave our watches, anything we had, we just gave it all to her. We just wanted to leave everything that we could have value behind. So we all have one of these in my family, and she's very special to me. And she sits here all the time. Always watching over me.
And when you see it, how, of a morning when you're sitting there with your coffee, looking at your huge sales pipeline, how do you feel sometimes when you see it? Do you just glance at it, and does it remind you of it, or how does it live in your life every day? That little artifact.
Every day, it doesn't every day. Okay, it's like everything that you see around you. Once you put it in a place, it can become wallpaper. And so it's important. Every time I'm on a Zoom or something like that, I can see it there, and it reminds me. And I do every time I see any of them in any of my family's home or anything. Every time I see it, just reminds me we are so thankful to be alive. We're so thankful for the people that looked after us, and we're so thankful for the angels that kept us safe.
Amazing, and that's echoed by what Peter's just said. He said it's really interesting that the level of cooperation just happened, that it just happened that way.
Everything, Peter, everything did. Not only that, but the communication. Don't forget, we all spoke different languages, but we had no need to try and interpret for each other. We just got it. So, one of my messages is that, in adversity and all that kind of stuff, everything is so easy. Communication is easy. Finding our role is so easy. Why do we make it so flipping complicated for each other?
Yes.
When the chips are down, we come together, believe you me.
Yes.
And I've always said that when the chips are down, if we were attacked by aliens, we would come together as one race. And we would collaborate. I thought we were going to have that with COVID-19. For a moment, I thought this is it. This is the common global enemy that is going to bring us together. And for a little tiny while, I thought it was going to.
There's a question from Joe saying, do you think you changed as a person due to this event?
No, I was always this person. I'll tell you what it did change, Joanna, and it's a big thing now that I do. This is all about core values. It reawakened me to my true core values. When I got back, I looked at the office and everything I'd created with that organization, and I felt sick. There was no love. There was no connection. I thought, I remember standing in my boardroom and looking at the reflection of me in the trophy cabinet and thinking, what a fame-hungry, insecure little girl trying to prove herself to the world. What are you doing?
Wow. So it brought out the real you that had somehow...
Yeah, what I had passion in, I thought, this is it. This is what I've been put on this planet to do. And, I became the PRO of the Hikadu Village Fund. We raised 100 grand in 6 months. We delivered it back out to the people in Sri Lanka. We looked after orphanages. And I thought, this is it. This is what I'm designed to do. But that didn't last forever either,
Wow. There was one thing that did happen, though, wasn't there? Joanne's just written a new start. Yeah, I think that's quite fair. There's another piece to this story that I'd like you to finish with, and that's to do with you and your lovely fella.
Well, I do talk about core values. I remind people that when things like this happen, we're wakened up to our true core values. And I'll take you back to the night of the tsunami. We'd managed to get a little bit of a radio signal, and we heard snippets. And we'd heard that the tsunami was coming again, and it was going to be big. And I remember it was in the nighttime. There's no electricity because there's no electricity anywhere. The only thing we have is the light of the moon. And there were all these people crowded around these mosquito candles as if they gave off some kind of warmth. And I heard this multilingual babble of voices as people were just talking to each other. And I remember hearing the sound of screams and car alarms and everything. And my ears pricked up and I went, shh. And everyone went quiet, and as soon as they did, other people started to hear what I heard: car alarms, screaming, shouting, panic. And so everyone started to jump up. Some people were crying, some people were packing their bags, some people were running around, one person trying to get up on the roof, and this pandemonium, this panic hit. I remember for a second I sat there thinking, do you want to take me? You might as well. I can't get any higher. We're as high as we can get. We're as far away as we can get. If you're coming again, that's just bloody unfair. And I remember sitting in front of these French doors saying, at least if I stay here, it's going to be quick. And then this thought came over and I thought, whatever happens, I've got to be with Stuart. Where is he? Yeah. And I remember desperately trying to find him in all that panic, and I couldn't see him. And eventually my eyes clapped his figure and I knew it was him. I remember kind of waving at him, Stuart, I'm over here. But he looked at me, but he didn't seem to recognize me. This panic just overtook me. And I looked again, I'm Stuart, I'm over here. And he looked at me and just looked me up and down and looked away. So in the end, I made it through the crowd. I went, Stuart, it's me, I'm here. And he said, I know. And I said, well, what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to work out how to get you up that mast. And I said, Stuart, how are you going to get me up that mast? And he turned to me and he said, Michelle, if I have to get you up in my teeth, I'm getting you up that mast. And in that moment, I just fell head over heels in love with him all over again. It was just like tumbling. I suddenly saw straight through to the core of this man. And I thought, do you know what? He's thinking about my life before his. He's thinking about keeping me safe. And I knew at that point he was always going to be there for me. And that's the point that we said, okay, if we get out of this alive, we'll do it. We'll get married. And so we did.
What happened?
The following year, we were so affected by the Buddhist people in Sri Lanka. They taught us so much. We managed to go back the following year and we got married on the beach. We had a Buddhist wedding on the beach.
Oh dear. Well, guys, I promised you stories. Thank Michelle. I know there's a lot more, but we need to stop at that point. But my goodness, guys, any questions or observations? Michelle, can I tell you how I feel? I got goosebumps again. That bit at the end, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Do you know what? I got a good one. I got a good one.
Yeah, but you couldn't imagine ever, I couldn't anyway, imagine any other way of invoking that feeling of love, compassion, empathy, collaborate. I couldn't think of another way to do it. Here's an observation from Doug. I've seen large-scale cooperation with the COVID crisis in our area. Doug lives near Bath. Did you see anything that could be taken from your experience that could bring about this cooperation without the devastation?
Yeah, well, what I try and do now is, I do a lot of behavior profiling and core values analyses. So I help people to understand what's at their core without having to go through all that devastation. But, at the end of the day, you need people to trust in that collaboration in order for it to happen. Yeah. Yes, we've seen wonderful little pockets of things that happen. And we always do with every trauma. We see little snippets of human magnificence, but it's going to take something pretty big for us to come together as one whole race. I really wish that was different. I really wish that people would see the power of collaboration, the fact that we can move mountains when we come together. But until people realize it, until they've been through it or seen a snippet of that, they're not going to believe in it. So, we just keep hoping. I'm always hopeful, and I always keep spreading these little messages I can about, how magnificent people really are, how collaboration is so powerful when we do it properly, and just hope that starting these little fires will,
Yeah, I think that gives me personally great hope, because the reason I started to do this broadcast, Michelle, was because I was an okay storyteller, but I realized though that we needed that empathy, to see the world as other people see it, and we don't always have the opportunities for that. And I hope that having heard a story like that and others that we've had will encourage people to tell stories, because I think if you say, like even what Doug just said there is about, in his area they did something about it. Tell that story, Doug. Tell that story in your area. Get people to them, because the thing about these stories, I believe in the next 5 years, organizations that have not done well during this crisis, do not have a good story to tell, will struggle. I think people will say to them, no, not working here. They'll be looking for the positive stories. And I think that's the power of a story.
Infect the world with goodness, Doug. Infect the world with those good stories. And do you know what? Somebody said to me recently, Michelle, I heard your talk. What a incredible way what a fascinating way to create an affluent lifestyle. They know nothing about me. They know nothing about the fact that I didn't talk about this for a decade afterwards. Yes. They don't know that I gave everything that I owned away for the Hickadoo Village Fund. They have no idea, It's not a story until you've got the lessons. And once you know the lessons, then it becomes a powerful story.
Magic. I think Peter, I'll leave him for the last word here. Michelle, what he said was, never get tired of hearing that story. Love it.
Love you, Peter.
And here's another from Dave. Thanks, Dave. We need a collaboration pandemic. Oh, fantastic. Well, folks, we're out of time, but I hope that I told you it'd be good. I hope you enjoyed that, felt sad, felt happy, and I think, without sounding too cheesy, felt the love that was in that story. So Michelle Mills Porter, you're a star. I love you to bits. Do me a favor. How can people get in touch with you if they want to contact you or read your material? Where's the best place for them to catch a bit more, Michelle?
just link in with me. Find me on LinkedIn. There is only one Michelle Mills Porter on the planet. Thank heavens, my husband says.
I think that's a good thing as well.
You've heard our vicious banter. You know what we're like, Scott.
Okay.
But yeah, and just pick up the phone,
Yes.
send me a LinkedIn message, tell me that you've seen this, and let's just chat. I love connection. I love connection. So just be personal.
Yes. Well, thanks everybody. I'm going to bring us to an end. Three things. Next week, we'll have another story from someone. I've already got 2 or 3 volunteers. I just need to work out how it's easier for the people to get online and be here at the right time. I hope that, this graphic kind of sums it up. In the next week, keep your radar open to spot new stories. Because those stories, as I think Michelle has just beautifully shown, can change the world. And one of the great storytellers died this week, Jonathan Sacks. And Jonathan was a sort of man that lived his life through story. And because of all this other things that have been going on with America, etc., his death has passed almost without being noticed. So, sir, thank you. And I love this. Small acts of kindness can change and humanize our world. And I think that sits beautifully with what Michelle has just said. So, Michelle, thank you ever so much. It's been fantastic, and I can't wait to have you on here again. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you, Scott.